Okay, we'll try to have some fun. First, one of the things the auctions have been doing for years is promotions. Every single page of every auto remarketing or used car news or any industry is filled with promos. Now, promos are defined specifically as brand awareness advertising and or driving value for that particular product. The first question I would ask is, are the promos we are doing today have any validity in driving value? Have the dealers become so immune to them that another hat, another sandwich, or in some cases another Rolex, have anything to do with driving the price and the value of the cars? So what I'd like to do is address that first conversation to Doug with JD Byrider, because Doug both buys and sells vehicles at auction. Is that on? Are they on yet? He's going to turn them on.
Test. Good? Test. All right.
There you go.
So from a car buying perspective, a lot of times when there are giveaways, that doesn't really incentivize us to buy more or to pay more or even to come to a particular auction. Now, we do find some value in promotions, and we were talking about this earlier, promotions in regards to creating an environment that's a fun bidding environment that creates energy and excitement in the lanes. We see more value and have more value in that than we do giveaways from that perspective.
So I guess, would you say that does anybody even pay attention to some ad that specifically states X, Y, and Z at some auction other than the actual cars themselves? Is the actual, I'm giving away this, X, Y, is that money of any value today? And would the auctions be much better off putting that in some other venue to spend?
Yeah, I mean, we make a decision to go to an auction because we need the inventory, not because of a giveaway or a promotion or anything similar to that. So we're going to that auction anyways, and we're going to do our best to buy that car for the right price with the right quality. So that has no value to us. It does not drive us to an auction.
Okay. Linda, what would you say from the factory side?
Well, actually, Richard from Harley-Davidson actually gave me the best intro to this. We talked about it earlier in our meeting today, and I was talking about how Malcolm Gladwell in his book talked about making things sticky and trying to get people to come back or to buy your product. And I was telling the group, you know, look at Apple. Everybody wants to go to Apple and buy their products. Why? Because somehow or other they've made going to an Apple store a fun experience. They've got classes. They've got a lot of things going on there, and people continuously go back there and keep buying more and better products that they're delivering. So this morning when I heard Richard speak, I heard him talk about Harley, and when they were in their deepest, darkest hour, what did they do? They went back to the basics and they said, we need to build a community. We need to build customer experience. We need to develop or get back that relationship that we've had with our loyal customers for all these years. So I think that's really more what I'm trying to refer to in the way of the P in promotion. A hat, a jacket, that's not going to bring somebody there. You know, giving away a gift, that might not make somebody make a decision about coming to a sale, but building a community, having a relationship with the customer, making it fun for the customer to come to the auction, that's what I'm trying to communicate. You know, still 70, whatever percent it is, we could argue all day long. I'm selling a lot of cars to our customers over some form of the internet. But there are a lot of people that are still coming to the auction. They want to be treated with respect when they're there. They want to have an enjoyable day when they're there. They're spending their time and their money there. How can we make it an enjoyable experience for them? The other thing that we just talked about was the generation. What does the next generation want? Well, to me, that generation is very technologically savvy, much more than we are. But I have a 20-year-old son, and I see he never picks up the phone to call anybody. He's texting. I think even email is out with that generation. They're Facebooking, whatever they're doing to communicate. But he's still not home. I mean, he doesn't want to sit home. He wants to be with his friends. He wants to be in a community. So I'd say, what is the Harley ride of the auction industry? How do we build our community to make it a sticky place for people to want to come and do business? And that's the challenge that I think we all have to think about.
So if I can summarize right, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have segmented the auction industry into a whole bunch of variable parts, a lot of which has been web-based, a lot of which is obviously the internet, and that fragmentation is part of the problem of creating that community, or is it part of the solution?
I think you can have both communities. I don't think that people have to be at the auction for every sale, but I think over time, if a buyer never comes to the auction, never has a relationship with the auction, never has a relationship with the people that they're buying cars from, or the lane that they're buying the cars from, the consignor that they're buying cars from, then all of the cars become a commodity. And I think when they all become a commodity, we all lose. So I'm not saying that you have to have the buyer there every day or every sale. I'm just saying you have to have a relationship with them. I wish I had the answer. If I had the answer, I'd be a bazillionaire and we wouldn't be sitting here talking today. But I think that's the silver lining that this industry needs to be looking for. You know, I'm sure that Harley just didn't wake up one morning and say, okay, these are the things that we need to do to cure ourselves. It was a long process getting there, but then now they can look back and say, these were some of the steps that they took. There might have been other steps along the way, but the steps all turned into how do we build a relationship with our customer. That doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with them online, but we have to build that relationship.
Tony?
Yeah, just to sort of backfill that last comment about still being able to command a decent relationship even though it may have started out being web-based. Some of the things that you actually do to sell cars over the internet, you can become known as a trustworthy auction in terms of your vehicle descriptions and condition report writing capabilities. And I think the relationship might start out being ostensibly arm's length, but there's still somewhere along the line, there's this sort of touchy-feely, maybe even stickiness that Linda refers to. So it might be a bit remote, but I still think it's possible to establish that.
Well, let's segue that. When you looked at Craig's presentation earlier, which was very, very detailed, we're still looking at the old and difficult conversations with regard to CR, accuracy, the whole 9 yards. That's still part of the dynamic. And when you listen to Dale's conversation earlier this morning, he's talking about trying to diminish the risk to the online buyer. And when you listen to Bob talk about ARI and talking about specifically multi-platform selling, all of that is fractured within the industry. I mean, we're fractured in so many ways, it's unbelievable. But the dynamics are almost counterproductive. We're trying to increase days, to shorten days to sell, which affects the CR process because if you get heavily hit, you're obviously going to, without question, have less time to do an accurate CR. That's still a question. Dealers want to drop their cars off 5 minutes before. And from another perspective, arbitration rules, which we're going to get into in a couple of minutes, are actually becoming more of a risk problem because we're going up with the value from 500 to 600 that's excluded from a guaranteed car, which is okay if you're buying a $40,000 Mercedes. But with cars 11.2 years old in the marketplace, 7.2 years in the actual trade-in space, and those values of those cars dropping to $4,000 or $5,000, You guarantee a very good 90,000 or 100,000 mile car, and you could absorb a 600 or 10% hit. How does that mitigate risk for the buyer online, and how does it create synergies all the way across? Paul?
What was your question again?
Oh, no. Get the BlackBerry out.
What was your question? I mean, you talked a lot there. So what was the...
Well, I guess the question is, if you're trying to create the community and you're trying to create the confidence, okay, and you're trying to get more people to buy online and put the whole community together, the worst problem that the auctions have are arbitration related, CR getting done, which has always been the same deal, and then instead of working on that dynamic, we are raising their exposure at the same time.
Yeah, I think with the changes we're making to the arbitration policy, and that we have proposed to the arbitration policy, it behooves the auctions to be more accurate with their CRs. The more accurate the CR is, the more pictures, the more information, it makes it more comfortable to the online buyer. And then also being able to handle that online buyer as if they were at the auction. So that hands-on experience, following up with them after the sale, pushing the PSI program with them, making sure the PSIs are thorough, and then making it easy to arbitrate the vehicle if you're remote, that they understand the guidelines, how to contact the auction, and how to work through that. If it's difficult for that online buyer to get all the information on the car, the pictures, to know how to touch base with the auction if they can't get a hold of somebody on sale day, if they can't get a hold of somebody in the arbitration office, or they don't understand the arbitration procedures, then that makes it an uncomfortable buyer experience, and it's a lot better for the people that are at the auction because they can touch and feel somebody at the auction.
Tony?
I think there may be something a bit more fundamental about this whole direction. You know, the nature of our business is changing, not just radically. I mean, I think we've got to start stripping down this whole being that is the auction business. You know, I don't think people are going to rely on us to create that sense of enjoyment and sale day sentiment and just go. I think we've got to step into the role of the assayer, the guy that says, as a mercantile agent, we will ensure that the buyer gets what he thinks he's going to get, and that the seller is being introduced to the widest audience possible for his cars. You know, we've been talking all afternoon about the customer and the demands the customer's making, and I think this is a customer push that we really have to sit down and listen to. You know, technology is sort of forcing in on us right now, but I honestly believe that there is a technological opportunity here for us as an industry to grow back outwards and embrace that. What I see, and this may be a touchy thing to say right now, but the way I see our association is somewhat inward looking, almost to the point of having your head in the sand. Now, there's a lot going on out there, and we've tended to push it away, and we've let other people get on with new responsibilities that are blossoming up all around us, and we're tending to sort of stay into some sort of nucleus. And I believe we should be more outward looking and embracing of new things to do, not just, you know, garble our bids on sale day. I think we can step into a much, much larger role. It's like stepping through a veil. You've got to recognize that there's something new out here, and we got to do something about it, because at the moment what I see is other people doing things to us, to our detriment.
Steph?
Are you suggesting, when it comes to the monies in arbitration, that $600 now, right?
I think that's what they're
Is it
recommending is
five,
going to move
six?
to.
Regardless, when you're talking about a $5,000 car, that's a lot of money. Are you suggesting using that money as a marketing tool to keep like a dealer guarantee center rather than an actual arbitration?
To a degree, from my perspective, and I'll throw this back to the group as well, is if you're trying to remove all the risk impediments to online buyers, for older units. I understand the newer cars and the 1 and 2 year old racks and all that, you know, in the specialty vehicles. Those are no-brainers, there's no question. But when it comes to the bulk of the cars being sold today, a lot of which are being sold by franchise dealers to independent dealers or repo vehicles, at some point there has to be delineation to mitigate that risk. Quit giving away hats or shirts or whatever. Create a real dealer guarantee center, because really arbitration was never meant to be putting the auction in the middle. The definition of arbitration is specifically an independent third party. How many auction operators in this room would consider themselves independent guys that can make a decision not looking at the buyer and the seller day to day and going, oh crap, which way am I going on this one? The issue is really simple. We aren't an arbitration area. We should, as a group, however, say we need to focus on that area and make people glad that they bought for us by supporting that end. Because nobody's happy about, I've got a $6,000 car and it's got a $500 problem that I have to eat, and then, but thank you for the hat and the free sandwich you gave. So that's what I would say. That would be my comment.
I guess I'll jump
Paul?
in. Yeah, I'll jump in on that. You know, I think there's a reason the 5,000 and 6,000 cars don't sell well online. Is because they do have more risk, and I think those sell better in the lanes. And when you look at the seller's position on those vehicles, they don't know when the brakes are going to go out or when there's going to be a major problem with the car. So to go over the top on taking that risk on either by the seller or the auction to get more online sales, maybe it's best to let those cars be as they are, knowing that they're higher miles, older cars, and let the guys in the lane evaluate the cars and take that risk rather than trying to push those cars to an online buyer. That may not be the right venue for them.
So you think we're going to go to almost two-tier system then? Lot up on the net, older stuff physically in the auctions.
I think the market will determine that. I don't think we should try and push it one way or the other. We should offer the cars for sale, but let the market determine the best venue the car is going to sell in.
Okay. Steph?
He said what I was going to say.
Okay.
I think one has to recognize that dealers tell lies. I mean, it's fairly fundamental. I remember back in the 80s, I went to Tokyo to see a fledgling, it wasn't online, it was a video disc system to sell cars remotely called AucNet. And these were Japanese dealers selling to one another. And there's this facility over there that they don't want to save face with one another. They wouldn't dream of misdescribing a car. That's not the case in this country, and I think so long as that prevails, then we have a responsibility and also an opportunity to step into that role of arbiter.
Okay. Yeah, Doug.
One thing I know about the internet, we buy our best car that we possibly can off of the internet, and we buy cars on the internet from $3,000 to $7,000, and we also buy the worst car we possibly can on the internet. And there's one common factor: it's either a poor condition report or a poor seller's disclosure, and that pushes it over to the line to the worst car that we can possibly buy on the internet. So I understand what you're saying, Paul, but also we buy a great car on the internet when we have faith and confidence in the seller and in the arbitration process. Other than that, it's a very complicated purchase. It's a very complicated arbitration process, but I think there's plenty of opportunity for additional buys on the internet in lower price buckets.
I think that lends to what Tony was just saying then. Obviously, we, as auctions, need to uncomplicate the process.
Thank you. Well, let's keep continuing on another fun path. We can't talk about pricing because that's illegal. We can, however, talk about revenue streams. I won't ask you this.
Good.
And here's the question. When you're looking at the dynamics of the revenue stream from the buyer and seller side, and you look at the presentations that Dale made and the one that Craig made, from the seller side, it's, I want to pay the least amount of money that I possibly can. I want the best CR process. I want X, Y, and Z. From Craig's buyer side, I want great CRs, and I want to buy at the lowest selling point. I want a buying point. Today, the auctions are at the point where there's about a 30% difference on average, and of course there's differences based on what your market mix is, between what a seller pays for us to consign and sell the car for him and what the buyer pays in today's market. Now, so I guess my question to you guys is, what impact is that math in the brain of the average buyer having with the average price of your car, if any? Doug?
Well, we've noticed a very significant increase in buy fees, probably within the past 3 to 4 years. And I think one of the driving factors of that is it's been a seller's market. It's been a seller's market for the past 3 to 4 years. And obviously, you know, because we sell too, we sell at the auction too, and I see our sale fees remain relatively constant and flat, although our buy fees keep creeping up and up and up. And until that shift change happens in the marketplace, I think we're going to continue to see that difference between a sale fee and a buy fee just continue to grow. Unfortunately, I don't like it, but right now we don't have a choice. We have to pay those fees. But I know from a seller's perspective, I enjoy it because it's about a third less, you know, so it's a big difference for us.
Tony?
I think as a broad-based observation, dealers tend to follow cars, buyers tend to follow cars. So having put the sort of monkey on the back of the seller to be there and selling cars is one of the reasons that prices have been prostituted the way they have. And I make no excuse for saying that. I still think it's one of the best value propositions out there right now. And should you prohibit a guy from bidding on a car any more than he already does by raising buyer's fees? I think that's going to run into the buffers at the end of the rails sooner or later. We've tested that sort of elasticity long enough, I believe. But I think what we've got to start being able to do is create more services for the sellers and not really make any excuses for charging for absolutely premium service. I mean, if I told a lot of our sellers right now that I was going to increase their costs by the cost of the condition report, a bunch of them would probably walk. But if they knew that they were going to get an absolutely exquisitely detailed piece of documentation that was going to underwrite the vehicle, they might just be prepared to offset the costs. And maybe that's where we as an industry have fallen down ourselves in not promoting the wherewithal that we have in terms of the expertise that resides in the auctions.
So could you also add to that, and let me see if I got this right, that in search of market share, we have, let's say, bastardized our own industry and not shown the true value of the product that we do?
Well, I think you can see that for yourself. You see other companies out there appraising and evaluating cars that I truly believe that should be our responsibility. You know, there are other companies charging for it. They're not doing it for charity.
Understood. Linda, any comments?
The only comment that I would make is that dealers know what the retail market for their vehicles that they're purchasing is. So they're going to spend whatever money they're willing to spend, including what they expect to get in a margin. So as a consignor, whether you charge me or you charge them, my net revenue is not going to change. I think that we have seen that the cost for our buyers has gone up a lot in the last 5 years as well. I can't say whether it's necessary that it's gone up or it isn't, but I would say that I have seen more reaction about how to avoid those costs. And I think that we're on a slippery slope because as it gets so expensive, people start looking at that number and saying, wow, that's a lot of money. Is there a more efficient way to get that vehicle to the dealer? A large portion of our dealers go to our dealer body, so we constantly have to say to ourselves, are we redistributing these vehicles as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible? And if you drive that cost so high that it then becomes a different equation, then I think you have some problems. Obviously, as a major consigner, I need a place to store inventory, get all the data, get the condition report, secure all these vehicles. So I need some sort of avenue to collect and store the vehicles, and then reconditioning. I 100% believe in reconditioning a vehicle and bringing out the best value you possibly can for the customer, and then selling it. And I've said this numerous times as well, I don't look at an auction as much as an auction. I look at the auction as a bank. The auction changes my asset into cash, and then they take on all the risk for me. So it is a really good, efficient system, and I hope that the costs don't get so exorbitant that I have to look for another efficient system.
Okay. Doug, you got a comment?
Yeah, one thing that we do now that we used to not do 3 to 4 years ago, when a buyer calls myself or one of our team members to help price out cars, so what's the value of it, we use several resources to help price out the value. But our first question anymore is, where are you buying it at? Either from an auction or from a wholesaler. And if it's from an auction, we back the value of that vehicle down by $200 to $300, depending on what our fees are. So if it's a $6,000 car and they're buying it at an auction, we'd be telling $5,700, $5,800. So that definitely pushes over and affects what potentially the value of that car could be worth at the auction for us.
Okay. Let's go on to one more subject, and we'll have one more after that. I think we're still within time. One of the issues that obviously that Governor Romney had when he ran for president was he did not address the minority citizen in this country, and he lost a substantial part of the Hispanic and other minority votes. Other than bilingual kiosks, what are the auctions doing today to draw in the changing sociographic and demographic groups, whether it be Asians in Southern California or Hispanics in the Southwest, to make them comfortable with the auctions today, to drive the value of those cars, even some of them that are staying here and others that are going across the border? Anybody want to take that one? Tony?
We have ladies' bathrooms. No.
Yeah, what?
I'm sorry. That was trite. I didn't mean
Can
it
you
that
say
way.
that?
Actually, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we tend not to have to serve lamb with couscous. We tend to serve fried chicken and collard greens. However, we do have a fairly big and growing Hispanic content in the dealer network, and we've now got various avenues for them to conduct business if they wish, in Spanish. We haven't really had to flex as far as Russian or some of those other sort of stans out
Because of
there
your
at the moment.
geography.
But I think as broad-minded as I tend to be about these things, if I had a whole bunch of new potential buyers coming to my auction that wanted those services, they'd have them in a heartbeat.
Steph?
80% of our staff is bilingual. I know my auctioneers can count in both English and Spanish. Aside from that, I do have a ladies' bathroom. I do. I have a key to it. It's locked. Aside from that, I don't know what else we're doing as an industry.
I would say that one of the easiest thing to do would be bilingual websites. I don't actually see many bilingual websites in the United States. There's a few, and you can use Google Translate on something, but I think it's a huge part, and I don't say I'm up here to solve it, a huge part of the market that we're missing, that we really haven't addressed, and if we don't, it's going to catch up to us, because the good old boy white guys are not the ones that are independent dealers today. They're driving the value at the auctions of a lot of cars. It's minority driven in a lot of areas. It's ethnically driven, and I don't think we approach it very well. I personally.
Just one more comment. We do have a fellow named Carlos that we promote in the various minority markets around us. He's on Hispanic radio stations. He has advertisements with his mugshot and come and see me when you're at the auction. So we're trying to sort of give that sales element some other personality.
Okay. Paul?
Jim, one thing that we did about 5 years ago for the international buyers and also for the Hispanic buyers that were coming up from Mexico, we were requiring deposits at our auctions, and we would hold those deposits. They weren't taken out of the first vehicle's proceeds. And, you know, we have control of the asset. We have control of the title. The asset and the title don't leave until we get payment, and we stamp the title for export only. So one of the things we did to embrace all of the international buyers is we did away with the deposits, just to make it more friendly to do business with, and that seemed to have an effect. We've also done some things on our website just to court the international buyers, so really the overseas buyers, to pull them in and let them buy cars, whether it's through a simulcast sale or through the traditional online sale.
The question for those of you in the back was condition reports, and when are they going to be consistent across the industry? I think that the NAAA has taken a good stab at it. Unfortunately, the problem is that all consigners don't think that all the grades are equal. Like what is average to Ford might be very good to another consigner. I mean, my partner sitting next to me here has very different cars than I sell. So his $3,000 car he might think is in excellent condition, which it would be a rough in my sale. So that's part of the challenge. So I think what you have to do is get consistency among the portfolio that you're selling. So what we work for or strive for at Ford is to have consistency among the auctions that we sell at and the condition reports that we present to the customers. I won't say that we're at 100%, but we do know where we're failing, or failing is maybe too strong a word. We know where we have inconsistency, and so we're continuously trying to get the auctions all on the same standard, so that if it says it's a very good car, it's a very good car at all the auctions we do business with. If it says it's average, it's average. If it says it's rough, it's rough. We 100% internally at our general office know where we have, you know, a variance, and we don't have a variance within a chain organization as much as we do because we do business with different organizations, and we're working on that every day. But I think we're light years away than we were 5 years ago. Does that help at all?
Anybody else have a question or a comment? Okay. Final question. Obamacare throws 25 million more people into the infrastructure and medicals in this country. And I guess my comment to that is, as the auction, and of course, where are they going to go? I mean, we wait long enough in emergency wards now, and there's not enough primary care doctors. Will the industry go that way if we continue to compress infrastructure? We're shrinking infrastructure, we're closing down some facilities, we're hoping that the internet is going to absorb quick enough. But if you grow over the next 5-10 years, will there be enough infrastructure, trained personnel to handle the volume that can't or doesn't get sold through the net? Nobody wants to try that one?
I think you twisted political views.
Well said, Linda.
Anybody out there want to try that one?
Number one, vote them out, if you're talking about the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
I think there's an opportunity to do that. I come back to charging a good price for a good product. And if we're to absorb the costs that are forced down our throats that we can't avoid, then we either get into cost transfer, which we've done plenty of that in the past. But I think that we should still look for other opportunities for revenue streams that exist in the internet space that we are not going after at the moment.
Now, I think the the auctions, all of us have learned over the last few years, as volumes have come down, how to shrink our auctions, and we're better at what we do today. So as it comes back, maybe the incremental cost of adding employees is going to be a little bit higher than before, but we're in a much better position to bring the staff back on and ramp back up than what we were previously. And it took a while for us to learn how to ramp down. Now we have to learn how to ramp back up, but do it in a smart way.
Yeah, I think there's an overarching sentiment that people think the advent of the internet and its growth around us is going to dislodge our employee base. I think quite the contrary. I think there's all sorts of opportunities for us to grow into other areas of the business, grow the employment base, no matter what that costs. That sounds a bit glib. I don't really mean it that way. But as costs advance, our opportunities to sell more services. There are people out there right now reevaluating the structures of our internet capabilities from, Auction Edge, which is sort of cobbling together some old technologies, and there are some other people out there that are reinventing the technological wheel, independent auction owners, and one of them don't live too far from Columbus, Ohio, and doing a pretty good job at it. Very dexterous, very outreaching, rethinking the whole process, and I think it's really exciting.
I think it's important to not minimize the value of what we actually provide as well. We, like Linda mentioned, she looks at the auctions as a bank. We also provide great titles for the buyers. So remembering that we have a value to our costs.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Bobbitt, Mr. Antich, Cars, Charlie, and a round of applause for the panel. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, guys.